Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
It's The In Show, Australia's only show dedicated to innovation from Adelaide, Australia and across the globe.
Hi, this is David Grice and Troy Sincock once again, and we are talking all about innovation, entrepreneurs, startups, people with great ideas, that kind of stuff. How are you, David?
Going very well, thank you, Troy.
You've had another incredible week. You're always up to all sorts. Tell me about this thing called RAMP.
So, for the last 12 years, actually, I've been doing this project with the Wirraganda Secondary College, and we take them through a process of writing music, recording the music, and then they release the album, and then we have some awards at the end and all that sort of thing. And
Great.
This week was the week where they released their record.
Fantastic. And so what, people come along to hear the record and buy the record?
Yeah, so again, it uses the school community. So essentially what we do is help them understand what the business case is around how you can not only record and make the music, but then how you can make money out of it, and therefore they then reinvest into future years programs. But essentially these kids come in, they are from, in some cases mixed schools and all sorts of different areas around the south of Adelaide. And so what happens then is the teacher just gets them in, they learn how to collaborate, they'll learn how to songwrite together, and that then culminates in them having 3 days where we record 10 songs in 3 days, recorded and mixed, and then they make a record and away they go.
I was ticking a whole lot of boxes in terms of giving them a bit of a microcosm of what it would be like if they were in the music industry, is having them collaborate and work together, get creative. That sounds amazing.
It is, and one of the most powerful things for me has been seeing kids that generally disengage with school. Year 10 students, for example, that will be involved in the project, and then the following year they show up again, and they made it fairly clear in the year before that they're going to drop out of school, but this keeps them in. And it's such an exciting sort of thing. And this year, I tell you, that the musicianship was amazing.
Well, that really does sound incredible. Hey, we've got another great show lined up today.
Yeah, we're speaking with Robin Sands, who's the CEO of Link4 Australia. Now, he's leading the field in e-invoicing for small to medium enterprises. Now, I'm not sure whether you know much about e-invoicing, but essentially it's automating that whole process for small businesses.
Great.
And we're also chatting to Dr. Simon Rice. Now, he's the project manager behind Entourage. Now, have you heard of Entourage, Troy?
I have, only as much as I know that it exists and that Movember are putting their weight behind it.
Well, yeah, as you said, they're funded as part of the Movember Foundation's Social Innovators Challenge, and their approach is profound, and they're helping and supporting social anxiety.
Fantastic. Looking forward to speaking to Simon about that one. But now here's Claire with more in news, including a story about an architecture firm who are making spaces with employees in mind. What else you got for us, Claire?
Cheers, David and Troy. In the UK, a startup company has created glasses that use augmented reality to help blind people see. The glasses, created by startup Oxsight, use cameras and computer vision. The device works by interpreting and enhancing the tiny bits of light, colours, contrast or dimensions that the user can see so the brain can translate it. The glasses are attached to a battery pack that has controls which can be customised to suit the wearer and their level of vision. These controls can change contrast and colours, it has zoom function, and it can also add cartoon-like features to people or objects. Each pair of glasses is powered by just a mobile phone graphics processor, and it runs on Android. At the moment, the startup is still trialling the device on people in the UK with diseases including glaucoma, diabetes, pigmentosa and retinitis. So far, the users have reported that they can now see faces clearly, read better and navigate their way around obstacles. It's expected that the device will be made available later this year. A group of Australian youths have returned from the 2017 Future Founders mission, which aims to help build the future of Australian innovation. As sponsors of the event, company Technology One and startup Catalyst teamed up to send the participants to Tech Hub Silicon Valley. The group of 20 individuals aged between 18 and 29 embarked on a 10-day mission to learn from the best of the best. They visited companies and startups including Facebook, NASA, Twitter, Google and Xero. They also attended networking events and educational forums to better understand what it takes to create a successful startup with global reach. Startup Catalyst founder and Shark Tank star Steve Baxter believes this mission was vital to supporting the transformation of our economy into a startup-aware, fast-paced global first thinker. It's hoped the participants will now share their ideas, newfound knowledge and inspirations with others to help the innovation and tech industries in Australia flourish. It's great to see our young people representing Australia and achieving great things. An office block in Amsterdam has been dubbed the most sustainable and smart building in the world. Ron Backer's architecture company PLP in London designed and built construction firm Deloitte's office block called The Edge. Ron had one aim, to focus on the needs of the employees. So PLP designed a large atrium with plenty of natural light, chairs and tables where workers can spend time socialising. The atrium is the integral part of the building as it provides airflow to the offices and reduces noise pollution from the nearby highway. The building is also energy efficient as it stores the warmth from the sun, which is used to heat the building in winter. What's even more groundbreaking is the app PLP created, which is essentially the brain of the building. It's connected to 30,000 sensors that measure the lighting, humidity and CO2 levels. The app can also open doors and decide where the best place is for people to work. Ron believes that smart buildings with features like these will be slowly adopted around the world and will make the happiness of employees a priority. Wouldn't that make working a little bit easier and enjoyable? And that's what's in news this week.
Thanks, Claire. Well, David, that sounds incredible. Wouldn't mind working at a workplace like that.
I mean, my mind's just boggling with all the different opportunities that could come out of that. I wonder if they're talking to that robot dog we talked about a few weeks ago that identifies foot odour.
So you can actually get out of the way of employees that have got foot odour, is that what you're saying?
Or I'm saying you actually find a space that they're not sitting within.
You can actually cordon them off in a section of the building.
You could. You absolutely could. I mean, I don't know as an employee whether I'd even know what I wanted.
It's a really interesting thing, isn't it? We've heard about places like Google for a long time who've really put the time into creating, these very creative spaces for people to work in. And, it's an interesting concept. When Claire was talking about, places where workers can spend time socialising, you don't think of socialising as part of work a lot of the time. But when you think about your day, if you go to work for 8 hours, how much of that time are you truly productive? And would it be better for you to get up and socialise briefly, coming up and developing ideas before you then go back to doing what you need to do? And maybe more productivity comes out of the days.
Or, if you're doing things you love, then it's all about fun anyway, isn't it?
Definitely. And the idea that you would explore this building too, so, the sensors are taking into account where it's best to work. So, there might be more light on one side of the building or just the conditions are perfect for a certain activity. It sounds really exciting. And you know what? It just does not sound like anything that's going to be foreign in the future. Like Claire was saying, you'd expect that to retain employees, you're going to need an edge like this, and technology is going to play a really big part.
Absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right there, where employees now are just very transient and nobody stays for long anymore. And I like the idea of just an app that can open the door for you when you want to go through it.
We're talking innovation on The In Show, and you can check us out at theinshow.online, Facebook, and follow The In Show on Twitter as well. Up next, Robin Sands, CEO of Link4 Australia, who are leading the field in e-invoicing for small to medium enterprises, and they're even getting the attention of London's Lord Mayor.
The In Show. It's all about innovation.
Adelaide is starting to be recognised as a smart city, nationally and globally. The City of Churches is rapidly gaining a reputation as the city for innovation. Smart city innovation is becoming a big part of our future. The Adelaide Smart City Studio is supporting people that are creating new smart city products and services for global markets. What we've taken for granted is now being embraced by residents and visitors alike. Adelaide Smart City Studio, creating opportunities.
Hi, I'm Jana Matthews from the Australian Centre for Business Growth, and you're listening to The In Show.
It's David Grice and Troy Sincock, and if you've missed an episode, make sure you subscribe to the In Show podcast on iTunes. In the next 10 minutes, we speak about Entourage, a really cool program providing an innovative approach to supporting young men and social anxiety.
The In Show.
Robin Sands is all about solving invoicing challenges for small to medium-sized businesses. Link4 is a simple and seamless invoice exchange, and Robin's here to tell us all about it. How did this idea come about, and have you been working in this space for some time, Robin?
Well, my background is actually in ERP, so I was working in this space with large companies. But my co-founder and I, Sam Hassan, we actually started meeting with small business owners in Adelaide to help solve problems for them. We met with them to ask what their issues were, and invoicing kept coming up. Yep. And so we thought we could find a solution for that.
So when you say ERP, can you just explain what that means?
ERP is Enterprise Resource Planning. So that's what the large manufacturing companies or large enterprises will use for their accounting and for many other systems actually that run their organisation.
And what was the issue with invoicing that you were trying to solve?
Well, you have these, say, little family-run restaurants that have a lot of deliveries and like 300-400 deliveries a month, and they've got all these invoices that have to make it into their accounting system. And it's often a family member that puts it in. So you might have the husband running the restaurant and the wife at night time, she's typing away, putting these invoices into the system. They're using things like Receipt Bank and other scanning apps to get the information in, but in their words, they're just workarounds. They're not solving the problem for them. Now they're using cloud accounting systems. They figure, well, the idea there is something can be sent from one cloud accounting system to another if there's a translator in between. And that's what we thought we'd create, a translator, which then allows like instant invoicing to happen. Information goes straight into the accounting system and there's no more physical data entry. There's no more typos that someone might put in. It just comes through exactly as it was written.
Fantastic. I mean, it makes life so much easier for people and enables them just to focus on their business rather than, what must happen for so many small businesses is that, the paperwork becomes an afterthought and then dealing with it becomes insurmountable.
Yeah, so a lot of small business owners are good at what they do, but they might not know anything about technology or accounting or anything like that. So what we've decided was, well, we can help from the technology side. And if this is a pain point they have, what can we do to help them?
Fantastic. Now, you've got a free trial?
Yes, well, it's Linkforce freemium, so it's free to use. People can sign up and start using it straight away. If they want to use some of the premium features, they can upgrade to a monthly plan. But a lot of small businesses would be happy just using the free version.
So how much pain does it take away when you do those BASs every quarter? I mean, I'm a small business myself and I spend a lot of time putting my receipts into a little envelope until such time as the end of the quarter comes up and I need to get them all out and sort them out and work out my GST. Clearly, this has got to be a game changer in that space.
Well, what we're doing specifically is focusing on the invoices and getting them in, and which can be done with receipts as well. And it's more around cutting out the data entry for that. So we're not completing BAS statements. Still need the accountants or the bookkeepers for that part of it. But bookkeepers we're speaking to actually see this frees up their time from that manual data entry that they do. They can now spend more time on doing value-add things like doing BAS statements or other things that can help improve the business for the business owner.
How do you find, those classic small businesses that you were talking about who perhaps, are focused on the service they're providing rather than, the invoicing side of things? How has it been with having those people adopt technology? Is that, something that I take it that they're very sort of, paper focused?
Well, they are in a sense in that that's what they get given from their suppliers.
Yeah.
But if there's something new that's going to make it interesting for them, well, let's just say the first thing is to get them to understand what it is, because you'd say an invoice gets delivered instantly and they think, an email, a PDF attached to an email, it's coming straight in. Whereas e-invoicing is actually much more than that. It just goes straight into the accounting system. Look, there are OCR scraping tools out there that don't really capture everything off the PDF, so it doesn't really do justice to what's there. Now, one of the aspects that is good about e-invoicing is it takes all the line items. So it's not just the totals, not just the date. It actually says what was delivered, how many weights, prices, all that sort of information can come in, which then leads on to really good inventory management. And so it gives them more data and more information.
So, Robin, how long has this been going, like your Link4 been going for, and what were you doing prior to that?
Yeah, Link4 has been going for about 18 months now. So that's when we started with the initial, interviews. And then we were trying to work out what was in the market and what could be done where. And we started building it maybe just over 12 months ago. This year we sort of went live with a version that people could use, and we're constantly improving on that at the moment. Before that, I've been in the software game since the year 2000 and started actually working in Adelaide for an American company, an ERP company. And they were from Santa Barbara, and that was nice to be get exposed to the Americans and the way they do things. I was with them for 8 years, which included they did ask me to move to Santa Barbara, but I couldn't due to family obligations. But they still gave me a global role and allowed me to fly around from country to country to do what needed to be done. And then I joined Quintic, which is a Dutch company, helped them open an office in Melbourne. And we did very well at the time, and it was 2008 when not everyone was doing well. But that company grew quite quickly, and I was looking after the marketing teams in China, Malaysia, Australia, and the US, visiting them every 3 months. And the CEO from Holland said, "Look, you're doing really well. Let's set up an office in San Francisco. Do you want to join me?" It's like, "Yeah, I'd love to. That'd be great." So moved over there for a couple of years and was setting up that operation. And then they asked me to move to Holland, and it was wintertime at the time when they asked that. And it wasn't appealing. So, it was that time when I moved back to Adelaide.
Great.
It is a beautiful country, though, Holland.
It is, yes.
So tell me, obviously you've had vast experience before you've come to arrive at Link 4. Have you leaned on other people within the same industry in South Australia to help come up with these ideas, or have you found like the network worthwhile in Adelaide?
We were a part of the South Start Accelerate program, and so we have 34 mentors, I guess you could say there, that we can call on any time, and there's a great deal of advice and support that they can give. There's so much experience amongst them, and some have done almost exactly the same as what we're doing, not the same solution, but going through the same process. And we call on them, and we get some very good support through that network.
Tell us about South Start and how you got involved and what you got out of it.
Well, initially there was the South Start conference that was being held, and we saw the advertising for it and thought, well, that sounds good. Let's go along and see what we can hear, learn, see what we can immerse ourselves in there. And then we heard there was a pitch competition, and Sam and I said, well, let's try for the pitch. We had to come up with a business name before that. That's how early it was. But the best thing about that is we actually got to say what our company does and what we do within a couple of minutes. And it helped to clarify that in our own minds, and it made it so much easier than talking to people. So we got up there and did that pitch. It was a bit rough the first time we'd done it, but it was very nice to be able to, I guess, be exposed to the Adelaide audience. And from that then came the South Start Accelerate program. We put our hands up for that as well. We were one of the 4 that were accepted. And then that was a fairly intense program of meeting with mentors and talking about marketing, talking about sales, talking about development, culture, all these types of things that are very key for setting up a business. And they were always emphasizing, which we had in our minds from the beginning, is to set up a global business from the start. So if your business is going to be global, and software, it's not so hard to do that, then make sure that you put in the foundation at the beginning that you can build that business through.
So, Robin, obviously you've experienced so much going through South Start and got yourself surrounded by really valuable people, and got Link 4 to where it is right now. So what's next for Link 4?
Yeah, so we're doing some proof of concepts. We're doing some pilot programs with the federal government, with the New South Wales government, with some large commercial organisations. We're just rolling out now with one in Sydney. They've got 100,000 customers they want their invoices sent out to, and these are 100,000 small business owners. And so we're able to make that connection. So that's all going quite well. We're getting some encouragement at the moment to move to the UK. They have a need for e-invoicing for small businesses over there. Europe is actually moving ahead quite quickly in this space, but the UK is falling behind from a small business perspective, and that's because they don't have any really good solutions. Mm-hmm. So we actually did get contacted by the Mayor of London's office to see if they can help us or encourage us to set up an office there. So we are talking with them. It seems likely we'll get an office set up in April next year, and there's some regulations through Europe that mean government agencies and large organisations have to have an e-invoicing solution in place in 2018. So the timing's right for us to move over and do that as well.
How do you put yourself in a situation where you get contacted by the Mayor of London's office?
Do you want the real story?
Yes.
It was actually, we're in a pitch competition in Sydney at StartCon, which is good in itself. There was, it seemed like 1,800 companies pitching. They had 2 minutes to pitch, and then we had 3 judges sitting there holding up numbers and saying what we were getting out of 10. Just before we went on, by the way, they changed the judges, and Steve Baxter came in, sat down. A few groans from those of us that were about to go on. You get the first one, get up there. He goes, you don't know what you're talking about. 2. Next one, like, yep, you got a 3. Another one, you're a 1. You wasted my time. Got very nervous about that. And then we got up there and he asked a question and he goes, yeah, I get it. And gave us a 9. And that sort of like sent a ripple around the audience. It's like, oh, wow, that's kind of good. That led on to some very good introductions. We did get to pitch on the main stage in front of like 4,000. Afterwards, was actually on the balcony having taking a selfie with the Sydney skyline in the background. The guy next to me was doing the same thing. And so we just started chatting. And after about 20 minutes, he gave me his business card, and he was from Bloomberg in the UK. And we were talking about what we're doing in that, and he goes, well, I think we need to keep in touch. It's like, great. Didn't think too much more of it. He went back to the UK, and then we got an email saying, oh, yeah, I was talking to Chris, and he said what you've got, and it's just what we need here. What can we do to encourage you to come over? And so they started working with us from that perspective.
Power of networks. It's one thing that every entrepreneur's got to be good at, and that's absolutely an amazing story.
Now, Robin, tell us what's in for you right now.
It's going to seem a bit obvious, but actually e-invoicing is what is in for me right now, because it will actually affect so many people. There's more than 95% of businesses in Australia are small and medium businesses, and everybody deals with invoices pretty much every day. So this is going to affect so many people.
Robin, with all of the experience you've had, and especially when you talk about your networks, that you have these chance meetings and meet people that turn into something that's quite profound for you, what advice would you have right now for any other entrepreneur that's sort of coming through the ranks and presumably experiencing the same things that you are?
Well, obviously a good network of advice or mentors that you can get around you is a good thing. You don't necessarily come across them in everyday life. So what I do is actually I listen to podcasts. So on my way to work every morning, I get my mind set properly by listening to a podcast, get in a business mind frame, and that helps me get ready for the day.
Well, Robin Sands from Link4, it's been great having you in the studio on The In Show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
It's David Grice and Troy Sincock on The In Show. Subscribe to iTunes and listen to The In Show podcast for more innovations. And while you're there, why don't you rate us 5 stars? David, it's November. You know what that means.
It's Movember.
It definitely is. Your moustache is coming along quite nicely too, let me say.
Oh, look, it's, usually a 3 or 4 dayer and I'm already there.
For those of you that don't know about Movember, it's all about raising money for men's health on a global scale. And effectively what happens is men start clean shaven and then they grow a moustache or a beard, and by the end of the month, their partners hate them.
Well, I tell you what, you're a bearded man.
Yeah, I am. That's why I can't participate here. I'm afraid if I shave it off, it'll never grow back. Anyway, as part of the Movember Foundation's Social Innovators Challenge, this really cool project called Entourage has been created, which is a great support for young men. That's next on The In Show. We'll be speaking to Dr. Simon Rice.
Download the Phoner app before you head to your next event. Find people easier, market yourself better, and get connected using Phoner. That's spelled P-F-O-N-R. Phoner. Available in the App Store now.
Hi, I'm Lako Novakovic from Novatech, and you're with Troy and David on The In Show.
The In Show.
Joining us on The In Show now is Dr. Simon Rice. He's Research Fellow at Origin, the National Centre of Excellence in Youth Mental Health. And they've just received funding from the Movember Foundation to support Entourage, which is an e-mentoring and social networking platform for young men with social anxiety. G'day, Simon. Tell us all about Entourage.
So Entourage is a new way of thinking about providing support for young men who are experiencing difficulties with social anxiety. The focus that we've taken on social anxiety is pretty important in the context of young men and men's lives and their mental health, because we know that social connectedness is a really strong predictor of kind of poor mental health and indicators of loneliness and things like that for men. And through the lifespan, we know that connectedness, if social connectedness is low, it can be a major risk factor for things like suicide attempt and death by suicide. So Movember's taken a really strong focus on new ways of thinking about tackling the problem of men's social connectedness. We've taken a specific focus on social anxiety because we see that that's one of the key things that can really be impacting on young men's social connectedness. And we know a lot about social anxiety as it is. It's a fairly prevalent condition. Population estimates range, but they're usually somewhere in about the 10% mark of the population. And social anxiety is a really can be a very impairing condition. And so some of the key features are kind of, really strong fear of negative judgment from others, significant fear in social situations, And this can really impact on people's functioning and can often lead to managing their social anxiety through self-medication. So we think about drugs and alcohol and things like that. So that's why we want to take a really fresh approach with Entourage.
When you talk about self-medication, Simon, what are you referring to there, and what does that look like?
Well, self-medication can play out in lots of different ways for different people, but we know that if someone's really uncomfortable in a social situation, they might be more inclined to turn to alcohol to manage that anxiety, to feel comfortable. And in lots of ways, that's kind of normalised in our society that, we refer to alcohol as a social lubricant, and if that's controlled use of alcohol, that might not be a big issue. But if people are using alcohol regularly in terms of managing that anxiety and to excessive amounts, then that can be a problem.
I think this is really innovative and, a contemporary approach to dealing with some of the issues that men are facing, Simon, particularly in regards to the e-mentoring and the social networking platforms. I suppose there are many other opportunities for people to deal with each other face to face. But exactly what do you do and how does that work in terms of e-mentoring?
So we spoke to groups of young men about the kinds of support they would want to manage their social anxiety symptoms, and they told us some really key things. They wanted support that was going to be accessible for them, and so the online environment is a perfect vehicle for that. They wanted support that wasn't going to stigmatise anything that they were experiencing. They wanted support that was going to be personalised to the needs that they had. They wanted it to be engaging, and they wanted to have confidence in the fact that it was best practice, kind of evidence-based intervention. So bringing all these things together, we thought the best way to go would be to use the online environment and the social networking space that affords, but also bring online expert mental health clinicians who can provide an ongoing e-mentoring framework for them. So it's not just that young men come into this website and kind of have to self-direct themselves through the content that's there. They're able to do that if they want, but they've also got the support of an ongoing e-mentor to guide them through the 12 weeks to make sure that they're actually able to engage with the system in ways that can actually be helpful to their social anxiety.
Can you explain a little bit to us, Simon, about the process that they go through? You just mentioned it was a 12-week course. What does somebody go through when they're actually going through that?
We find that 12 weeks is usually a good amount of time for there to be a therapeutic effect if there's somewhere in the range of the mild to moderate kind of level of symptom function happening. And so that's why we kind of choose that kind of time range. And so when a young guy comes into the intervention itself, firstly we'll get a baseline snapshot of the symptoms that they're experiencing, and then the e-mentor that they'll be working with on a kind of an individual basis, even though they won't meet that e-mentor in face-to-face environment, that person will work with them in the online environment and guide them to the aspects of our therapy content that we've got that are most personalised for them. The other key component is that in order for social anxiety treatment to be effective, one of the key treatment factors is that people start to falsify some of these negative beliefs that they've got that maintain their social anxiety. So what the e-mentors do is set tasks, which in a technical term are called behavioural experiments, where the young guys are able to test out whether some of these beliefs are actually true or false. And the more they start to falsify these beliefs, the more their thinking patterns start to change, and that's when their social anxiety symptoms will start to decrease.
So really it's just leading someone towards a shift in thinking.
Well, that's right. And the other innovative component of the intervention, using a social networking component, is that they're not just getting support from the e-mentors who are trained mental health clinicians, but they're getting support from the network generally. So other young guys who might be experiencing similar or distinct challenges, supporting them in their efforts.
How do you go about keeping people engaged? I mean, I guess I'm a typical sort of a guy that, if I have an ailment, I don't go to the doctor. I just sort of say, well, it's going to be all right. And it's generally because my wife gives me a gentle, encouraging, and sometimes often very severe prod to get there. How do you keep these guys engaged in this? Because I think socially the man is seen to be, a tower of strength, and often, admitting that you have these issues is somewhat difficult.
Absolutely, and that's why we're focusing on this population in particular, because we know that young men don't engage particularly well with our mental health interventions as they are. So in terms of trying to keep them engaged, one of the innovative things that we've done in terms of not just having social networking and being in the online environment, is that our therapeutic content is delivered through comics. So rather than just reading slabs of text or kind of words in the occasional image, we have worked with comic designers and professional writers to translate these kind of key therapeutic concepts that can perpetuate and can maintain social anxiety into a medium that's quite creative, it's playful, it's engaging, and the feedback that we've got in our development phase of the project has been very positive, that our reference groups of guys were saying, yep, this is a way that does keep us engaged. It's not just the boring old kind of stuff that's the same.
And, stepping away from what you're doing for the people that enter the program, taking a look at, how it's executed, it must be a really exciting and, innovative way of dealing with some of these matters which have been probably dealt with in traditional ways in the past, but having therapists working with, people that are creating cartoons and then e-platforms puts you all in a space where you wouldn't have otherwise worked together.
Absolutely. We're a true multidisciplinary team, and so the meetings that we have are very creative, and it's really forced us to think in new ways and in innovating in this sense that we are having to invent it as we go, which is truly exciting. But there are challenges in that because as researchers and mental health clinicians, we have a particular skill set and a particular focus. Our graphic artists, our comic artists, they have a particular skill set. Our professional writers have a particular skill set. Sometimes getting on the same page takes a bit of time, and so whilst some of our comic-based content, the imagery comes together very quickly, sometimes the story or the writing behind it takes quite a few iterations to get it right. And that's a process that we're refining and we're learning. But the main point is really coming back to that factor around engagement, that we know that there are a lot of online interventions out there and available, and we know that the uptake of those online interventions is very good to start with. But then people disengage, they get bored, other things happen in their life. So for an intervention to be effective, we need to make sure there's a substantial treatment dose. And so that's why ongoing engagement is really important.
So are you seeing a particular age group of people coming through the program more than others, or is it a fairly broad demographic?
Well, we'll know when we start collecting data. So far the project has been in its development phase, and the Movember Foundation generously funded that development phase. And so now we're about to embark on the pilot phase where young men will be coming in. The age range that we're focusing on is that 18 to 25 age range, and so that's where we've focused our kind of concepts around that kind of developmental phase. But there's scope to translate this into other age group populations and other populations of men, so new fathers, men coming out of justice involvement situations, men who might be experiencing other symptoms. So this is kind of our test case scenario to start with.
Beyond the 12 weeks, what happens for the people that go through your program?
So beyond the 12 weeks, a decision might be made that ongoing care might be needed. So a referral can be made to a mental health service, whether that's a private service or a publicly available service. So we'd make sure that each individual young person has the support that they need. But because this is a short-term research trial at this point, we don't have an ongoing funding to keep it going at this stage.
This is such an important thing. I mean, we've been talking a lot on the in-show about the mental health of young entrepreneurs and emerging new businesses and the highs and lows that they feel. And we were even recently talking about how mental health in entrepreneurs is very similar to that of the music industry, with this extreme waves of different emotional roller coaster rides that they go on. Are you aiming to target this at sort of specific industry areas, or is this going to be something that's a really broad brush?
We'd like to see this in our first kind of dipping into a test case to see how it goes, to see where the areas where we need to improve it and see how kind of acceptable and feasible it is. But the applications are very broad, and I think the kind of populations that you're talking about in terms of entrepreneurs, musicians, often they have a very kind of striving character at their core, which can really propel them to do phenomenal and amazing things. But that kind of pursuit of perfection, or really chasing after deeply valued goals that are beyond the realm of what many people would kind of go for, can also mean that people are vulnerable to mental health if those goals aren't attained. or something gets in the way of them.
Simon, do you see the innovative approach of Entourage having a ripple effect throughout the mental health industry?
I think what we'll start to see in the next generation of e-mental health interventions is a lot more innovation, a lot more user-generated engagement, the integration of social networking and the integration of new and emerging technologies, so wearables as they're coming through, really leveraging the true benefits of what a social kind of environment can provide. There are some hazards with that, so that in any environment where young people and users are able to enter information, there are always risks of safety. And so we're always very attentive to make sure that the websites are regularly monitored and checked, and we take action if there are any things that might suggest that a young person might be increasing a concerning increase in symptoms or might be at risk in terms of their own safety. So we have to make sure that there are dedicated resources to that as well.
Well, Simon, we think it's a fantastic innovation. We're really excited about what you're doing for young men's mental health, and congratulations on getting funded for Entourage, and we wish you all the very best.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Troy and David. Appreciate it.
It's all about innovation on The In Show, and if you know an innovator that we should have on the show, drop us a line at theinshow.online, and you can check us out on Facebook and Twitter.
Next week on The In Show.
So next week, Troy, we're talking about something that's really dear to your heart.
Yes, record collecting. It's a good thing and it's also a problem. Honest, I reckon I'd have a vinyl addiction. I've got 15,000 records, and that's not all of the records I've accumulated over my lifetime. I've managed to sell some over my life. It's taking over my home. I love them dearly, but most of the time they just sit there on the shelf looking back at me.
But there's nothing better than a record, right? Not only does it sound amazing, but just being able to read it, the covers and the art and everything that goes with that experience.
Yeah, so it's a real experience, as you say, and something tangible that's really been lost over the years as we've moved to downloadable files, which I think is why we've seen the resurgence in vinyl sales.
So next week we're chatting to Sam and Eddie from Wax Lyrical. Now, they're a vinyl subscription service that are delivering a sense of discovery every single month.
And while that is in my space, you're a great lover of AFL footy and you finally squeezed the Adelaide Football Club onto a show.
Oh, we had to find out a way that the Crows could be innovative, didn't we?
Well, you had to. Mind you, I'm really looking forward to speaking to Nick because, in terms of AFL teams, the Crows have got to be up there in terms of innovation.
Absolutely. So Nick McArdle, General Manager of Strategy and Projects. Now, that's a job that you wouldn't have even considered, in years gone by.
Exactly.
He's at the Adelaide Football Club, and they're going to talk about how they're leading the way in the AFL with innovations that are reinventing what it is to be an actual football club.
And Claire will have more mind-boggling innovations from around the world. And don't forget to check out the In Show online. Subscribe to iTunes. You can listen to the podcast, rate us 5 stars if you like, and find out more about this week's guests. And while you're there, follow us on Facebook and Twitter as well.
Well, what a great show it's been this week. And next Monday, we're going to talk more about what's in. But before we go, here's Flavia Tata Nardini from Fleet Space talking about what drives and inspires her to make her ideas work.
Space has been always a love of mine, and I just think that I'm in this, and I have this conversation with one of my co-founders, Mike Pearson. These kids that came to this world thinking this is what I'm going to do. I'm very much driven by technologies that can change and improve the world. I mean, if you think about Internet of Things, this is the next industrial revolution. We live through the next industrial revolution. How cool is that? And if you have the chance to create some tech to enable it, what Fleet does, it creates new internet, the new futuristic low-cost internet. It's not 3G, it's not 4G, but it's for another customer, things around us. And so you enable a change in the world. And why do you do this? Because an industrial revolution helps. What I really discuss with my team all the time, is these 9 billion people coming to live with us in the world in the coming 10 years. How are we going to feed them? How are we going to, the water wastage? People don't think about these things, but this is what keeps me awake at night, and deploying sensors and connect sensors made farm working better. Means, tracking food from one side of the other side of the ocean. We waste 40% of our food in transport. These are the things that I want to solve. And, space is space. If you look at, Elon Musk, what he does in his companies, from the Tesla to the battery he wants to make the world a better place. And, have a rocket for escaping plan if things goes wrong. Because they do go wrong, right?
That was The In Show. Subscribe to The In Show podcast on iTunes. Presented by David Grice and Troy Sincock. News by Shannon Corvo and Claire Murphy. Music by Zach Grice. Produced by Jason Walker. The In Show, brought to you by Adelaide Smart City Studio.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.